Here we go, guys. I'm here at Safe Harbor with, it's actually my favorite group. I gotta tell you guys that, seriously. I've been a lot of shelters, I do a lot of workshops. You guys are so easy. And you guys always interact, and I greatly appreciate that. Today we're gonna talk about patience. If you notice, every topic we've spoken about kind of added on, build. So today I want to talk about patience, because patience is the one thing that gets a lot of us in trouble, or lack of patience. We think we have patience, we do, until it comes down to something we really want. You know, it's something we really think we deserve. Some of us, we don't have patience with people. You know, we talk about every week, they just wear your nerves down over and over and over again, and you just lose your patience. Some of us, man, I don't know the last time you've driven in Philadelphia. They don't stop at stop signs. They don't stop at red lights. No patience. No patience, man. You sit at the light. They speed around just to get to the red light to stop. It's crazy. You trying to pull out a parking lot and the light is red, and everybody's pulling up the bumper to bumper like nobody has patience. You know, and it's ironic because actually we live in a society that's kind of perpetuated that. Because think about it, everything is instant gratification now. Every microwave, you can put stuff in the microwave, you get it right back out. So some people think that's cooking. They don't even cook anymore. You know, everything is instant now. You know, you used to have to go to the movies and you wait in a line like everybody else and popcorn. Now, you know, you can buy online. Tickets are waiting for you. Now, you can even get the popcorn delivered to your seat. Right, you know, you can get the food. Yeah, you can get the food delivered to your seat, man.
No, I've never been there.
Right,
Oh, really?
not just movie tavern. No,
Oh, yeah, I mean,
different movies. You go to AMC, and I'm plugging other things, but you go to different places. They will. You know, beforehand you order it, they bring it to your seat.
I did it last week.
Yeah, so you really, I think the longest you wait now is if you actually go to a bank, which most people don't, and the car wash.
Yeah.
You gotta wait in line in the car wash. But everything else is instant gratification. So it has not helped us with our patience. You know, remember when I was growing up, we had 3, 6, 10, 12, you know, 57, 48. And it was funny because 17, TV went off.
If you were lucky.
Remember, TV
Yeah.
went off. You know, and if you watch TV past 12 o'clock at night, you had the flag. It was just a flag on every channel.
Yep, and TV went on.
Yeah.
And
And you had to-
squiggly lines.
And you had to wait until it came back the next day. Now, man, I got 150 tests. Nothing on them, but you have them. But what it has done is produced a generational society that we lack patience. You even see in politics. You know, they'll be negotiating something, then the next day somebody will do something to say something to kind of try to speed up the process, and everything falls apart. We have, you know, now you ain't got to fix your flat. You got to fix a flat. Well, I don't know how long it lasts because, you know, I used it one time, my tire blew up, but that's a different story. But we do. So how do we learn patience to wait for things that we really need? Because I'm old school. I believe the better things in life are worth waiting for. I do. I think the better things in life are things that we work hard for, you know, that we plan for, and we go at it. My wife and I were talking about this last night. My shameless plug, we launched our podcast, last night called More Than Enough, You Are More Than Enough. And one of the things we talked about was how we had all these 5-year plans. You know, we made 5-year plans to move here, to move here, to move there, to move there. And most of them came out before 5 years, but it took patience. You know, we didn't jump over from an apartment to this single home out here that we couldn't afford. You know, because it takes patience. Because most of us, we want that house right away. So we just jump over. We want the new car right away. So we just jump over. So we end up in a hole. We end up in a pickle, as old people used to say. So think about it, man. Somebody, what do you describe patience? Anybody want to describe that?
Taking your time.
Taking your time. I like that. Anybody else? Everybody's thinking hard. Yes.
To me, patience is holding steady fast while there's other million different things going on around you.
Anybody else? So I'll give you my definition and give you. Patience is the ability to keep moving, but not getting ahead of yourself. You understand what I'm saying? Most people think patience means I just sit there and wait and do nothing. That's not true. You know, you got to keep working towards the goal, but it's not getting ahead of yourself. For instance, if I say we just got finished talking about, I want to buy a big screen TV, and they got this TV, man, it's, you know, $800. It's like a 85-inch TV set, and it's perfect. And it's a Samsung. There's a name brand. I want to get, you know, patience says I got to wait, save. But then I go in there, and they have a no-name TV for like $400. So I bought a no-name TV, and then you realize the picture's not as clear, You know, you call up for customer service, you got somebody in another country. You know, I'm speaking because it happened to me before. You call somebody, and they, you know, it's a lot of stuff that comes with it. You know, so yeah, you get instant gratification, but when you wait for what you're really looking for, it works out better. We do the same thing in relationships. You know, we set out with these hefty standards. This is the woman I want, this is the guy I want. You know, and then next thing you know, we bump into somebody getting off the subway and we think that's the woman or man God sent us because we're in a rush to get into this relationship. And that's why the divorce rate is so high. Because people don't take their time anymore. I don't even know, do people still date? My kids, they grown, they tell me people don't date anymore, so I don't know, do they? So it's like instant gratification all the time. I've talked to people, they meet somebody, moving in within a month.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but you see it all the time. You know, and the more you go through society, the more you see people want instant gratification. You see a lot of young ladies, they want the guy making 6 figures. You know, they're working somewhere making minimum wage, but they want this dude making 6 figures, you know, with the new car and everything, because they don't want to wait. I don't hear people say, I want to meet somebody, let's build something together. You know, let's work hard together. You know, we talked about it last week about, you know, yeah, sometimes people are down and we got to kind of work with them, but you don't hear people talk like that anymore. So patience is not about doing nothing. It's about not giving up on something that's being built. So the question is, what's being built? You guys are kind of in a different situation. I do understand that. And patience for you got to be really hard. You know, because you come from having to not having, and you're anxious to get back to your own. However, what do you think would happen if you jump out here too soon?
You're bound to fail.
Wow. Anybody else?
I don't think you're bound to fail, but I think you may not be ready for the repercussions that come with what is to come. So if you don't completely get prepared, you know, that failure might come from you not having the tools to deal with your new situation.
Wow. More times than not, when we get ahead of ourselves and we're anxious, and we'll talk about a little later, we start repeating past mistakes. I give you a perfect example. When I was, the summer before I went to college to play basketball, I had to work on my left hand. Coach said, you gotta work on your left hand, gotta work on your jump shot. Shot a bunch of jump shots, got myself together, worked on my left hand, had a great left hand. Getting to the game, when the game get tight, pressure come on, guess what hand I went to? My right hand, because that's what I was used to. So when we're impatient, we go back to what we're comfortable with.
Dominant.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's the right thing to go back to, but we go back to what we're comfortable with. It's like a person who moves somewhere and they're lonely, and then they go back home and they go back to a wrong group of people. You know you're not supposed to go back to them, but you're comfortable with them. And you're not patient to wait to see who else am I gonna meet? Or if I meet somebody and you're talking to somebody and they're in a toxic relationship, and they won't leave the relationship because they figure if I leave the relationship, I'll be by myself, because they don't want to take that chance. And my comeback is, well, how are you going to meet somebody if you're in a relationship? Now that's changed a lot because some people don't care. They'll still meet somebody in a relationship. But impatience would do us in. And waiting is hard. Waiting is hard. I know, it is hard. You know, most of us, we buy cars because we don't like waiting for buses. We do. If the train ran every 15 minutes, it'd be 14 minutes too long before it get there. We rather go to the ATM than get a line at the bank. I know people still go to a check cashing place, which I don't understand, to a truck, because they don't, you know, instead of going to a bank, because they want that money right away. You know, they don't want to see a check clear. They don't open up a bank account. So waiting is hard. It is. It's like if you're waiting for that special person, especially if everything is happening to your friends around you. Everybody's meeting somebody, and here you are. But the thing about waiting, it teaches you a lot of stuff, man. And then when waiting is hard, don't look at what you're not getting. You know, look at what you're waiting for. Remember we talked about the glass being half full, half empty, and I say people who look at the glass and say it's half empty, focus on what they don't have. People who look at the glass as half full, focus on what they can get. There's distinct differences. People who see the glass half empty do a lot of things to try to fill that glass up. You know, people who see the glass half full, they're gonna take their time. You know, because they want it to be sustainable. Yes, ma'am.
There was a guy that was here last night in his group on Sunday, and he was talking about how he used to live for the next big thing, and that would send him into like catastrophe every single time. But like, there's a difference between that and taking your time and waiting for the next big thing instead of just living for that. Like living in the now is so important.
Because most of the times we try to create the next big thing,
Right.
and everything is not for everybody.
And it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and just because something is good doesn't mean it's good for you. And there's a difference. You know, we all want the big thing. We do. Just like people hit the lottery. You know, statistics say 60% of people with the lottery are broke because they want the lottery, but they don't plan for it. Man, if I get $1 million, man, you know, then you get $1 million, you go out and buy 4 cars that you can't drive.
You can only do it one
Yeah,
at a time.
you know, you go buy a house, it's just you got 20 rooms. You know, you got to pay utility bills, you got to pay for the maintenance of it. You do a lot of stuff because you're not prepared. So sometimes the waiting is where we can prepare ourselves for what we get. It's like people will spend $70,000 on a wedding and invest nothing in the marriage because they want the party because it's instant gratification. But when you get to the marriage, it takes work. You know, and it takes transparency. You know, it takes negotiate. I don't like compromise. It takes negotiating. But people don't want to put the work in. And what do? We came up with no-fault divorce. Divorce used to make you wait because they thought if you waited, you could think about it and try to work things out.
Right.
And some genius came up with, well, nah, we just gonna do this thing.
No fault.
Yeah. So unfortunately, because of that, people go into marriage and get out. You know, so not knowing what is next is frustrating. It is. And I hear this a lot, especially when it comes to relationships. I hear somebody tell me, well, at least I know what I have when I'm with this person. You know,
That's
because,
just settling now.
but lack of patience will make you settle. And that's why, in my humble opinion, most of us live a mediocre life because we settle. We settle. You know, we have things in us that say, I could accomplish this, or we get here, and we stop because we think we're okay. But you should never settle for being okay. You should always try to be the best version of yourself. Always, not compared to somebody else, but always. You should always try not to duplicate your mistakes. So while you're waiting, you should be learning. You know, while you're waiting, man, you should be watching what's going on around me. What can I do differently? Do I need to change my friends? Do I need to change my attitude? Maybe I need to read books more, maybe audio books, whatever you do. You know, maybe I need to get in a group of people who are trying to go where I'm trying to go. You know, and not people who just pulling and tugging. But when you don't wait, you just react. When you don't wait, you know, you just do things because you think it's good. And if you're like me, I say this all the time. It's like when I sit at my desk at home in my office, everything I design works. Everything. 100%. But then you get in these schools, it don't work. You know, in my office, I'm the brightest person in the world. And see, when you have lack of patience, it'll do that to you because you think this is going to work without really thinking it through. You know, when you have lack of patience, you probably don't have an inner circle because you don't want them to tell you, no, don't do that. You know, you don't want them to say that's dumb, that's stupid, don't do it. So you isolate yourself. Because now I can just make my decisions and then I can blame everybody else. You know, lack of patience, man, sometimes we feel stuck. And that's probably you right now. You probably feel stuck, like you're not making progress, but you are. And we talked about it when I first started, and I keep talking about it. Take something off every week. That's progress. Every week, set a goal for yourself. Take it off. That's progress. You know, you don't have to make leaps and bounds because while you're waiting, again, you're learning, you're watching them, you're taking stuff off, you are creating moments where you're successful. And you're building confidence, you know, and you can start to leave the past behind. You know, most people who are impatient typically keep looking back, so you're running from something, so you want to make this decision real quick, and a lot of times you end up right back where you started out at because you're making the same mistakes. You know, many of the setbacks that we suffer as people, it's not always lack of opportunity. Sometimes it's just poor choices. It's poor choices. You have an opportunity to get this job, and it's a good job, you know, and they tell you, well, okay, take 2 weeks, we'll get back to you. Well, you get impatient because 1 week and 6 days pass and you haven't heard anything. So you're not answering your phone, you're not checking your email, and you missed an opportunity because you lack of patience. Because sometimes we get so impatient, some of those things we work hard for, we stop working for. And right before the breakthrough comes, we quit. We do. You set your sights on, I want to get this house. I want to get a 3-bedroom house. You know, I want to have carpet, I want to have, you know, I want a garage, I want a nice yard, all this stuff you want. And you work and you save and you got your money, you know what you got to get and everything. And you have a bad day here. One bad day here. And because of your lack of patience, you go out and buy a house. And it's not the house you wanted. So now, guess who's not happy now? Guess who's unsatisfied with what you just bought? Because you're not patient. So patience, lack of patience will definitely cost you, man. The ability to stay steady when life feels uncertain. That's the thing, man. To me, patience teach you how to live a life that's sustainable. Versus you just got finished talking about the gentleman, the quick fix is always trying to get something right away. Is that really sustainable? Nah, because something great is not gonna happen every week. You know, so what do you do in between those times? You know, when you're in a relationship and you want to have this great relationship, it's not about a moment, it's about moments. It's about doing stuff together. You know, it's about things that occur over time because we all have bad days. If you want to have a great relationship, it takes patience. It takes patience because you're talking about putting two people together. You know, people don't realize you're bringing two families together, their family, your family, two sets of friends, their sets of friends, your sets of friends. You know, and most of the times you're bringing two different mindsets. Yeah, we may have some stuff in common, but I don't think anybody sits down. Remember we talked about the questions you ask for dating? People don't ask the tough questions. Like how many ask somebody, you know, who says, I love you, what does that mean? We just hear it and we run with it. You know, because we want to be in this relationship. And then we get in this relationship and we find out their love is like they love their pants, they love clothes, they love cars, they love material things. It's not the same kind of love you're talking about. But because of lack of patience, once you hear that word, you in. And marketing has figured out a great way to do that. If you look at some of the stuff that's happening on TV right now, man, marketing has figured it out. You know, these advertisers, they get these cars, they put the beautiful woman in the car, you know, when they're trying to sell products, they got these models, you know, they know what they're doing. You know, you look at, no matter what it is, they figure out how to tap into a certain population. Have you ever noticed, marketing is strategic. There's certain things you won't see in certain neighborhoods. Like I'm from the hood, so you would see the smoking billboards, and you would see the 40s and all that stuff like that. If I ride through now, you see vaping. You're not going to see that in a rich neighborhood. Why? Because you're not reaching that population. You know, it's like when I was a freshman in college, my teacher told me, she says, successful marketers, they don't go against somebody they can't beat. They find a niche in the market they can get into. Like Volkswagen will never go after BMW because it's never going to win. But now they can compete with Nissan and those other cars because that's more on their level. So their campaign ad is going to be geared towards them. Because that's who's going to spend the most money. It's the same thing with sneakers. You know, when Nike, when Colin Kaepernick, remember Colin Kaepernick, he did a thing and Nike was like, we getting rid of, we keeping them, and everybody was like, get rid of them. Well, Nike came out and said, we know who buys sneakers. And the people who buy sneakers support Colin Kaepernick. So even in marketing, they understand that we don't get that in life. You know, so Nike weathered the storm. You know, people were firing at them, saying all this stuff to them. But you know what? Stocks started to go back up again. Started to rise again because they were patient. They didn't just react because people were banging on the door. So we got to make sure, man, staying calm under pressure. And that's hard. Sometimes you have to know who you are to not be impacted by others around you. And that's tough. But sometimes you have to know what's in you. You know, so when other people are firing darts or doing things and saying things, you know who you are. You don't get people to get you to start acting out of emotion. You know, get you rushing to do stuff. And it can happen in any walk of life, man. I know people tell people off at work and they get fired. You know, because they want something, they don't get it, so they revert to this behavior. Emotions are raised all over the place. And I say this all the time, whoever controls your emotions control you. And lack of patience can make you get emotional for a lot of us, man. So we got to stay calm under fire, man. Making decisions with clarity and not emotion. I talk about that all the time. When you make your decisions, how are you processing to make them? Are you saying, well, is this good for me? How does this fit into my long-term plans? Or you want instant gratification? This will take me to next week. It's like a person who, I like sneakers. I do, I like sneakers. I never forget growing up one time, man, my dad would give me allowance and stuff like that, and I would have to make it last. You know, back in the day. Now they just give you stuff. But back in the day, you had to make it last. And I remember I wanted these sneakers. And so instead of me waiting and just taking a little bit and put up, man, I go blow my whole wallet in these sneakers. So next day, I'm ready to go to school. I don't have any lunch money. Didn't think about that. Didn't buy my tokens to get on the bus. Didn't think about that either. My dad gonna bail me out. Man, he taught me a lesson. I had to walk into school, and I had to take lunch from home. And people say, well, that's not bad, but you know how that's embarrassing when you were a kid and all your friends getting stuff from the thing, man. You bring the brown bag lunch every day. So I learned because of my impatience instead of just waiting. And it wasn't like my life was going to change dramatically because I got them sneakers right then and there. Just what I wanted visually, I wanted so bad that it evoked emotions in me like instant gratification.
Yeah, exactly.
And think about it. Sneakers, how long are they gonna last really?
But your stomach's always gonna be hungry forever.
It's that moment. So you have to think about that when you start making decisions. People get married because they're in a rush. You know, all their friends get married, so they get married. And now you marry somebody who you really don't know. You know, you had a couple of dates, maybe you did some things, and now you married, and now you found out all this stuff. And remember, I likened it to, I got a Volkswagen, my wife got 20 suitcases, I got 20 suitcases. You know, we decided to hook up. They all not fit in the Volkswagen, so what we do, we start throwing stuff out. So as we throw stuff out, he said, we start throwing stuff out, man, and we don't have any idea what's in those suitcases till we get down the road. So now we get down the road, we start unpacking those suitcases, and man, what's in those suitcases? Stuff we didn't bargain for. But because of our impatience, because we didn't take time to unpack these suitcases before we got into that Volkswagen to make sure we put the things in there that was going to help us and nurture us, we're in this situation now. So it's important, man. Trust in the process. This is hard, man. Trusting the process is hard. And what I mean by trusting the process, you have a plan. You set your 5-year plan up. It's a 5-year plan for a reason. It's not a 5-year plan because you got to make it all happen in 5 weeks. It's not a 5-year plan because you got to make it happen in 5 days. It's a 5-year plan because there's really no day-to-day timetable. You can check stuff off, but certain things you don't control. Like if you say, I'm going to buy this house in 5 years. Anything could have happened during that time. I could have lost my job, my wife could have lost her job. That would have set us back. You know, so don't rush stuff because you're impatient. Don't. You know, work the plan. You plan to work and work the plan. You know, and and you work the process. Yeah, the process may shift a little bit. Next week we will talk about why you need to have a mission statement. You know, everybody needs to have a mission statement. Everybody needs to have a personal mission statement, man. Like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm gonna do it. This is how I see myself. Because you can look at that and that helps you remain patient. Because you can see what you're trying to get to. Some people do vision boards. Or vision statement. A vision board, you take a bunch of pictures and you say what you want to be and you look at it. You know, and it helps keep you focused, not getting ahead of yourself because you know what you're trying to get to. You know, it's kind of like, you know how you play a board game and you want to win, but you got to keep doing the numbers. You keep rolling the 2. And everybody rolls 6s and 7s. You got to be patient. You know, you control what you control. What you can't control, you don't try to control. What happens when we get impatient? It produces, we go back to bad habits. Remember I told you a story about how I go back to my right hand, not the left hand. Impatience makes us go to things that are comfortable because when we're comfortable, we think that's going to speed things up. It's like people who, I used to do workshops in a rehabilitation center, and guys would come in, ladies, and we would talk about certain things. And the guys and ladies who typically came back, they were in a rush. You know, they couldn't wait to get back to the neighborhood, the same people doing the same stuff, and end up back in there again. People who were typically a little more patient. And patience doesn't mean you got to exactly love your surroundings. It doesn't. Some things in life we have to do that we don't want to do, but it helps us grow. I liken it to school. I tell kids all the time, school teaches you the discipline of doing something you don't want to do, but you have to do to be successful. You know, and that's what patience does. It teaches us the things that we don't really want to do. I don't really want to wait, but if I wait, I can be successful. It increases my chance to be successful. You know, we make emotional decisions. You don't have to answer, but have you ever did something because of the way you felt? Any examples?
Not off the top of my head.
Like I know some women like to shop. You know, they get frustrated and they go shopping. Never figured out how going in debt made you feel better because you felt good in that moment until you got that credit card bill.
They're just looking for something new.
You got that credit? No, some people call it. It was something last week. I wasn't watching. I was listening because somebody else was watching it in the store. They had it on a phone and they call it, what do they call it? Something therapy they call it now.
Retail therapy?
Yeah, retail therapy.
Yeah, shopping.
Yeah, so they got a name for it. You know, now only people that's therapeutic for is the store because you spend all this money.
Yeah.
You know, buying all this stuff, and especially if you can't afford it. But we come up with vices to replace our impatience. It's like Christmas comes around, and you want to get everybody a gift, and you want to get this great big gift, and you know you can't afford it. You know, you can wait till a birthday, you can wait till any, and it can be just because, but you go out and do it. So now you're in debt, you're stretching yourself. So that person's enjoying the gift, but you're not enjoying the gift. You're struggling now because lack of patience. You know, emotions, you know, we buy cars out of emotion. You ever go to a car lot and you go there and you can say, I want a basic car. They show you the top of the line car first. Got 24 speakers in it, man. Got air conditioning that blow your hat off, all the bells and whistles, the seats are heated, the stairwell is heated, everything is heating this thing, man. Then they go take you to the car you want. Your emotions are like, man, I don't want to get in here, man. I want that one. We buy the emotion. We do. You know, so we have not figured it out, but that's why we got to tame our emotions, man. Sometimes people make us buy the emotion because I'm trying to impress somebody and I really want them to like me. So I go buy this big ring or whatever it is, stuff I can't afford, because our emotions take over. Now, logic is saying, I can't afford this, and if this person really liked me, it wouldn't matter how much the gift costs. But our emotions want to make sure I seal this deal. So we have to really take time to think about, man, our patience. You know, are we patient enough? You know, how can we be more patient? Sometimes lack of patience make us accept things that we really shouldn't accept. It's like if I'm talking to somebody in a bad relationship and I'm tired of trying to find Mr. or Miss Right. So you settle for a toxic relationship. So my disclaimer is I'm not telling anybody get a divorce or break up. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is sometimes we settle in relationships instead of getting what we deserve. But you got to feel like you deserve. You know, I was just talking to a young lady downstairs because she booked my book, you know, You're More Than Enough. And she was saying how she's reading to her grandkids and they were like, yeah, that's me. And they felt really good about themselves. That's the purpose. But how many adults don't know our value? And we settle because of lack of patience. You know, some of you read the book I wrote, you know, Defeating Your Inner Critic. And I talk about that in the book. Our biggest enemy is ourselves. It is. You know, we think we should be somewhere and we're not there. Lack of patience. You know, we think we should have all this stuff that we don't have, lack of patience. You know, man, I should be further along in life. How many times I heard that? Lack of patience. You know, or because I'm not growing as fast as I think I should grow because, hey, he got a job and I don't have a job. He got an interview, you know, I don't, you know, lack of patience. I believe in timing. Timing is everything. And I believe you don't get what you can't handle until you can handle it is the best way for life to be. Look at athletes. If I was 18 years old and I'm in college and somebody came and gave me $40 million, I would probably be an idiot. Because I don't have it, I can sit here and tell you all the great stuff I would do. But can you imagine being 18 years old and you got $40 million and nobody can tell you what to do with it? You know, some of us, me included, you know, because you don't think, and because of lack of patience, you want instant gratification. So what do? All those things I can afford now that I couldn't afford before. So by the time you finish, you don't really have $40 million.
Yeah, Uncle Sam got half of it.
Well, it's funny because I never thought about like this. This guy was explaining professional athletes. He was explaining professional athletes how they go broke. You know, because they say they get $100 million. They look at the $100 million. To your point, they don't think Uncle Sam gonna get his cut. They don't think, you know, the AG gonna get his cut. All this happens before you get your cut. You know, depending upon where you at, when you travel these different cities, they charge you taxes. You know, you go to Toronto, you go to California, they got outreach. So by the time you really get, now you don't spend $100 million, but by the time you really get down to the nitty gritty, you got about 45, but you already spent it. And that's what happens when we're impatient. We don't think things through. You know, we just go do stuff because we see something and it looks good and we go for it. My grandma used to always say a lot of monsters live in mansions. And she was right. You can meet some very attractive people, man, who's some jacked up people. But because of our impatience, we're not asking the right questions. You know, because of our impatience, we're doing stuff we really shouldn't do. Sometimes we do stuff out of character. So it's important that we do. Patience slows you down enough, man, to help you see things, to see the big picture. It's kind of like fear. People talk about fear. I believe we were given fear. It's a healthy emotion to make us stop and think. Fear tells you I can't swim. I'm not jumping into the ocean. You know, fear says I know somebody got burnt by this fire a long time ago. I'm not sticking my hand in the flame. You know, fear says I see cars running up and down the street 100 miles. I'm not running out there. You know, fear is a healthy emotion. The thing about fear is we want to make sure it doesn't paralyze us, but it's a healthy emotion. Like patience, it makes us stop and think. It makes us look at the big picture. If I do this, this could be the consequences. I've already done this and I already had those consequences. How many times I want to keep repeating that? Because now I'm like the hamster on the wheel, running full speed round and round, getting nowhere. So it's important that we practice patience. Patience builds discipline. It does. Patience builds discipline, man. We learn to have patience, man. We get discipline. You know, and discipline is not, most people think when they hear discipline is this physical thing. You know, like when I'm do parenting workshops, they think discipline is just always beating somebody. No, discipline is having boundaries and expectations.
But it's a kind of, discipline is like showing caring.
Yeah, that's part of it, yeah.
And that's part of the problem nowadays. Kids aren't being disciplined. Therefore, they're like out of control.
But even with us, we have to show, for instance, I used to work overnight at this facility downtown for at-risk youth. And so I used to come down Broad Street. Every light on Broad Street would be green, except the light on Broad and Cumberland. And it was an auto zone there. That light was always red. And you know what was funny about that light? There was always a cop sitting behind the building because he knew people were gonna run the light. Because they see all these green lights, he knew it, and it never failed. Every night, 2 or 3 people shoot through there, and the cops come out and get them because people are impatient. Man, why is this one light red? And like now it's funny because Broad Street, the speed limit is 28 miles an hour. You know, and I'm thinking 20, you can walk 28 miles an hour. It's just super slow. But the ticket is $100. But you still see people because they're impatient. You know, so we do things when we're impatient, man. It's not always going to help us in the long run. So we got to really start thinking about, like, what's your plan? If you don't have a plan, what are we rushing for? You know, have you sat down and said, this is what I want to see happen over the next 5 years, 10 years? You know, have you planned for where you want to live at? You know, the type of house you want to live in, a neighborhood. Have you planned for, you know, if I do reconnect with my family, what's that going to look like? You know, we had a young lady last week who was talking about how her son, oh, you weren't here, you were here. She was talking about her son who she wasn't expecting it. You know, so now what's next?